Welcome to my Dan's 420 Chronicles 2022 concert review. First of all, I'd like to just take a quick moment and say thank you all for taking the time to hang out with me today and checking out my latest video. Before we get into today's video, I would also like to take a quick note and let everybody know that we do have a special guest with us today. Here in the background, we have got Mr. Battery joining us. I don't know whether he will stay on camera for the full video. And I can tell you right now, as long as he is on camera, he's not going to contribute, not one bit. Although, it is always nice to have the dogs, either one or both, on camera with me when I do these videos. So everyone, take a quick moment, say hi to Mr. Battery. He says hi back to all of you out there. Anyway, getting back to today's video. I mentioned last week that this would be my last video of 2022. I will be back in 2023, probably mid-January, with more weed reviews, more 420 projects, and possibly even more of these concert reviews, depending on how well this video does. So we'll see how that all goes, but looking forward to 2023, no doubt. So for today's video, I thought it would be kind of cool to just take a look back and kind of reflect on the bands that I got a chance to see this year, kind of rank them, break them up into different genres, and try to rank them as best as I can. I tell you what, that's going to be a very tough thing to do because I've seen some really, really good bands this year. So to do that, I've got myself a joint rolled up. And of course, as always, the world famous purple pipe. And I thought we'd just turn this into a little bit of a smoke sesh. I'll get nice and baked. Hopefully all of you out there can do the same. Maybe you like to smoke a bowl, bong tokes, roll a joint, a blunt, some dabs, or even edibles. Hey, I'll tell you what, even if you want to have a few drinks, whatever it is, I encourage all of you to sit back, relax, get yourself in a nice, comfortable mood, nice and comfy position to watch the video, that is. And let's just kind of go through this all together, shall we? I'm going to start with my joint that I've got here twisted up. And when I get this going, we'll start talking about some of these bands and some of these rankings, shall we? All right, which side to light up? That's always a question. Always a tough decision, right? Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and light up this side of it. All right, we got that going for us right now. Oh, yeah, that's hitting pretty good, too. All right, let's get back to this year's concert review. So in 2022, I attended 34 shows, 3 festivals with opening bands. That's got to be close, if not more than 100 bands altogether. That's crazy. That took place over the course of 42 days this year. This was the second highest amount of concerts I have ever attended in 1 year. The most concerts I've ever attended was in 2019. I think I got to about 42, 43 different shows. That was also an amazing year. Saw a lot of great bands that year as well. And though I may not have seen that many bands this year or more, I tell you what, I feel very thankful, very blessed that I had the opportunity to see the bands and go to the shows that I had an opportunity to go to. Not to mention all the people that I got to meet at these shows. Tell you what, you make some really good friends, lifelong family at some of these shows. Anyway, so with all of that said, as I mentioned earlier, the only way I can do this is to break the bands up into different genres. And then when we break them up into the genres, I will kind of rank them or talk a little bit about some of the highlights from some of those shows. And then I will try my best to pick the top show in that genre for 2022. Now, when we're talking about genres, I know there's some people out there who are probably going to disagree with where I placed some of these bands in the genres that I put them in, which is okay, I get it, because some bands certainly fit in more than one genre. So if you happen to disagree with me, by all means, that is perfectly fine, but let me know. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what genre you would have put that band in. And also at the very end, I would love to hear from all of you in terms of whether or not you agree with my top picks for each of those genres. So, with that said, let's jump into let's talk about the different genres first, and then we'll jump into the first one. So I broke this up into classic rock, alternative rock, grunge, rap, and rap rock, pop. There's an interesting one, right? Who would have thought I would be at a pop show? But it happened, and we will, of course, talk about that here in just a little bit. And then the last category that I have is all other rock, which really covers a whole lot of bands. And again, those bands probably could be broken into other genres or maybe placed in the genres I've listed. But again, I just kind of did my best to do that. Once we get through all these genres, the very last thing that I will do is I will talk about the festivals that I attended, and I will rank, or I will pick the top festival that I attended this year at the very end. So, with all that said, let's go ahead and start with the first genre. And the first genre we're going to look at, I have labeled as classic rock. Now, this can be a little bit confusing too, because classic rock bands, or what they play on the oldie station today, are bands that I was listening to when I was growing up in high school. So to hear the classic rock station playing bands like Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Guns N' Roses, and I think I've even heard Metallica on the oldies station. Might have even heard a few of those in the grocery store. I tell you what, hearing those bands on the oldies station certainly makes me feel a little bit old. However, it is what it is, right? But more importantly, those are not the bands or the era that I'm talking about when I'm referring to classic rock. The bands I'm referring to are more bands that I listened to when I was growing up at a very early age. Some of the first music that I remember hearing, the bands that my parents exposed me to, the bands that had huge impacts on my music thought processes throughout my year. And I'm talking about bands like Pink Floyd, Aerosmith, The Who, and Alice Cooper. In fact, those bands are the bands that I would like to talk about for this genre. Those are the bands that I got to see this year, excluding Pink Floyd. Let me clarify on this. I didn't actually see Pink Floyd this year. I saw Roger Waters, who is one of the original founding members of Pink Floyd. Now, here's something interesting. I have actually seen Pink Floyd in the past. I think it was in the 90s. I was in high school. I got to see them twice. Once in Seattle. Oh, that was an amazing show. That was at the Kingdome, back when the Kingdome was around. I know I'm showing my age now, certainly. But I also got to see them up in Canada. We drove up to Canada one year, and I mean, it had to have been pretty close to that same year, and we saw them there too. That was an amazing show. So when I found out that Roger Waters was coming on tour and playing mostly Pink Floyd songs, I knew that that was going to be a show I had to attend this year. Now, those of you that follow me regularly know that I have two sets of top 3 bands. I have my classic bands, such as the bands that I'm referring to now, and then I have bands later on in life when I got older, like in high school, and everything up till now, and I have my top 3 from there. But, excuse me. Apologize for that. But my top 3 classic bands start with Bruce Springsteen, The Who, and Pink Floyd. So again, when I saw Pink Floyd or Roger Waters was coming on tour, that was a no-brainer. I had to absolutely attend. And I tell you what, he put on an amazing show. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see his entire set because the day that he was playing here in Denver, well, that night, Jess and I had to catch a red eye because we were heading to Virginia for the Blue Ridge Rock Festival, and we had to leave about 20, maybe 30 minutes early. So I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't get to catch his entire set. But I tell you what, the songs that I did watch him play, absolutely amazing, and I'm so glad that I got the opportunity to go. However, I don't think that Roger Waters is going to take that #1 spot in this genre. There was Alice Cooper, which we did go and see at Blue Ridge. That was an amazing show. Never seen Alice Cooper until this year. Sorry, my joint went out. I never got to see Alice Cooper I can remember listening to $1 Million Babies when I was just a little kid. My dad used to love that album. He used to play those songs. Poison, all of his songs. He played nothing but all of his greatest hits. And the theatrics were amazing. I saw Alice Cooper die on stage. They guillotined him, took his head right off. Oh, the theatrics were incredible. I am so glad that I got to see that show as well. Although, I don't think Alice Cooper is going to take that #1 spot either, which leaves it down to The Who, which is my second of all time oldie classic bands, right? And that leaves Aerosmith. Well, I tell you what, The Who was amazing. This was my first/second time seeing them, and let me explain what that means. So I saw them back in, I think, 2018. I think it was 2018. I went with my dad and my uncle, and I got really drunk at that show, drank way more than I should have. And, of course, I'm smoking pot in the arena, and I'd been told by security to stop multiple times. And, being drunk in the drunken state that I was in, I thought I could get away with it. I thought I could be sneaky about it and still do it well. I did it one too many times, and they ended up kicking me out. So I was really disappointed. I probably maybe got 3 or 4 songs that night into their set before that happened. But so I feel like I never really got a chance to see The Who, even though I did see them play a few songs. And I know that's my fault. I take full responsibility. I should not have gotten that drunk, obviously, but it is what it is. But who gets kicked out of a Who concert for smoking weed? Come on, these were some of the original bad boys of rock and roll back in the day. Keith Moons, how many of you out there know who Keith Moons is? That guy was a rock and roll monster. Anyway, it is what it is, like I said. And as good of a show as The Who put on, unfortunately, even being my top 2 band, I don't think they're going to take that spot in this category. For me, it's going to come down to Aerosmith. And Aerosmith was just amazing. How old is Steven Tyler at this point? He's got to be, in his 70s, maybe late 70s? I tell you what, that guy went out there, had so much energy, sang his ass off, sounded amazing. When I found out that they were doing a residency in Vegas, I knew that we were going to go see him. And that's where we saw him, was in Vegas. Interesting fact about Aerosmith here. Maybe they're not in my top 3 of oldies bands, but they are certainly within that top 10. They've had such an influence on me growing up. I remember after Permanent Vacation came out and they went on tour. They were touring with Guns N' Roses. Now, they are my favorite of all-time bands, which we'll talk about that top 3 here in a little bit. But they were touring with Guns N' Roses before Guns N' Roses was even big. And I remember thinking, I'm absolutely going to go see this Aerosmith show. And was going to buy tickets, and just the week before, I got in trouble in high school, and my parents grounded me and didn't let me go. And since then, I have not had the opportunity to see Aerosmith until this year. As I said, Jess and I traveled to Vegas to see them. They put on an amazing show, played hit after hit. I think I knew literally every song that they played. And again, the energy of Steven Tyler, not only Steven Tyler, but that entire band, they put on one hell of a show. I hope that I get the opportunity to see them again, maybe in 2023 or sometime in the near future. I'm hoping that I get that opportunity. So for me, for this first category, classic rock, the #1 pick show for me is going to be that Aerosmith. Hey, they deserved it, no doubt. So let's move on to our next genre, and the next genre is the alternative rock genre. Now, bands that I have listed in here that I got to see: Simple Plan, I think they're alternative rock. The Black Keys, the Lumineers, the Killers. How many of you out there know who the Killers are? Oh, they are an amazing band. Imagine Dragons, AWOL Nation, and Panic at the Disco. Boy, this was a tough category. This was a tough genre to try to pick the #1 pick, because all of these bands are amazing. Simple Plan, I'll be really honest with, I don't know a lot of their music. In fact, I only knew one song. But they were a band Jess wanted to see. So we went and saw them. I actually saw them twice this year. We saw them at a festival, at the So What Festival in Texas. And they were just a bucket list band for her. So when she found out they were playing at that festival, we bought tickets, planned everything, bought our hotel. We were going to drive to that show. And excuse me, a week, I believe it was a week, maybe 2 weeks after we bought all of our tickets and all that situated, they announced an actual U.S. tour and that they were coming through Denver. So we ended up getting to see them twice, which is cool. I'm glad that she had that opportunity and that I got that opportunity to be with her to see that band, as well as 741, which is who they toured with. But anyway, again, I don't know a whole lot about them, so they're clearly not going to take the top pick for me. The Black Keys, they are an amazing band. They have so many good songs. But I tell you what, the band themselves, they just don't have the energy on the stage that I like to see bands have. Now, they sounded great, and here's another plus for them. They played at Red Rocks. How many of you have been to Red Rocks? Those of you who haven't, let me tell you what, this is an amazing venue. And if you ever get the opportunity to see anybody there, I highly, highly encourage you to do so. Speaking about highly, my joint went out on me again. Let me get this thing going here. It's tough to keep this thing going and continuously talk here, but I'm doing my best. Got myself a little drink here to help with the cotton mouth. Anyway, so the Black Keys put on an amazing show at Red Rocks, but I don't think they're going to take that number one spot. The Lumineers, I'll be honest, I only know a couple of songs by the Lumineers, and the day that we went to go see them, I was so hungover from the day before. The Lumineers played the day after the stadium tour with Molly Crew, Def Leppard, Poison, Joan Jett. Oh, I had way too much to drink. Of course, I'll talk about that show here more in a little bit, but that Lumineers show was the following day, and I was just so hungover, so beat up that it was a good show. They put on a good set. Don't get me wrong. Nothing on the band whatsoever, but me personally, that was not one of my best shows this year. The Killers, well, the Killers. Now, if you were to ask Jess, she would tell you this is her number one pick for this category. And I tell you what, they did put on a great show. In fact, I heard after they played here in Denver, a few nights later, they played in, I think it was New York, and they had Bruce Springsteen come out and play with them. How freaking amazing is that? I would have loved to have seen that. I mentioned earlier, Bruce being my number one of oldies, older bands. So yeah, that would have been an amazing show. But for me, the Killers are not going to take that number one spot. AWOL Nation, well, they put on a really good show. I only knew about maybe 3 or 4 of their songs as well. They played with Bad Flower. That was a pretty good set as well. But AWOL Nation just definitely not going to take that number one spot. Again, don't get me wrong. Nothing on these bands. All these bands put on great shows. I loved every minute of every one of these shows that I got to attend to. But for me, this just isn't my number one pick. Which leaves 2 bands left. That's Panic at the Disco and Imagine Dragons. Let's start with Panic at the Disco. That was an amazing show. Couple of things about that. First of all, it was me, Jess, my daughter. We ended up having an extra ticket. So for that show, we ended up taking Jess's middle-aged son with us. His very first concert ever. It was so cool to see him have that experience. He was so into the moment, singing, dancing, laughing, clapping. Oh, it took me back to my very first concert. I will never forget my first show that my parents took me to. It's like your first kiss, right? Those of you who are into music and go to concerts know their first show. It's one of those things you will just never, ever forget. In fact, you might forget that first kiss, but you will not forget your very first concert. For me, it was Bruce Springsteen. Mile High Stadium back in the 80s for his Born in the USA tour. We were up in the nosebleeds. I tell you what, I didn't even care. I was so hyped. That is an experience, again, I will never, ever forget. In fact, I got goosebumps now just thinking about it. Those memories that I have from that first experience really turned my life in terms of how I look at music and how I enjoy music. I'm so glad that I had parents that exposed me to that. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to expose Jess's son to that. So the Panic at the Disco, great show. The band put on a great set. They played like 20-some songs, a long set. But unfortunately, I think they're probably still not going to take that number one spot for this category. For me, it is Imagine Dragons. Now, Imagine Dragons, they put on such a great show. For that show, it was me, Jess, my daughter, her boyfriend at the time, and my sister and her fiance. And we had so much fun at that show. We were up in the stadium section, not in the top section. I think we were like in the 200 level. I don't really remember, but we had a really good view. We got there early. We pre-gamed a little bit in the parking lot. All in all, I think we had an amazing time as a group. I don't get to attend very many shows with that group of people, my sister, my daughter, and that, so it was a really nice experience. And then obviously having Jess there as well, it was just amazing. So for me, I'm going to have to go with that Imagine Dragons. Something else really quick. I've been wanting to see them for years up until this year that I got to see them. In fact, I think it was last year. Maybe it was before the pandemic. I don't really remember. That's what smoking weed does to you, right? But they were playing in, I think, Arizona, and Jess and I considered traveling to see them. That's how bad I wanted to see Imagine Dragons. We weren't able to make that work out, so when they announced this Denver tour, I was over the moon and ecstatic. And again, they absolutely delivered for that show. So for me, for this category, that's going to be my top pick. Moving on to our next genre, which is grunge. I got to see two bands for this category, and that is Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains. Both of them Seattle-based bands, which I consider my home away from home because that's where I grew up. I grew up in Seattle, even though I was born and now live here in Colorado. Most of my years, my grade school, high school, my adulthood, up until I was in my 30s, I lived in Seattle. So absolutely feel like that is, my home as well. Here's an interesting thing, too, about my school. I went to Shorewood, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was a member from Alice in Chains, I believe, that went to my high school 2 years before I went there, or he graduated 2 years before I went there, which is kind of a cool thing, right? Anyway, both shows were amazing. If I had to pick between the two, that's a tough one. Really quick, Pearl Jam put on an awesome set. Jess and I went with my daughter and her boyfriend at the time. They were driving, so Jess and I ended up having a little bit, maybe a little too much to drink. Jess, unfortunately, was not feeling well throughout that night. So even though the band put on a really good set, we didn't get to enjoy it. She didn't get to enjoy it, as much as we would have liked to. So for me, I think the number one pick of the two bands is definitely going to go to Alice in Chains. We were front row, right on the rail between William Duvall, the singer, and Jerry Cantrell, their famous guitarist. Of course, Jerry is just an amazing guitarist. Anyway, we were right there, right in the front. I knew every song that Alice in Chains played, and they just have so much energy. They're so grateful to the fans. They come out at the end of each of their shows throwing handfuls of picks out in the crowd to make sure that everybody gets some. So yeah, for me, the grunge genre is definitely going to go to Alice in Chains. That brings us down into the rap and rock rap bands. Interesting category, because I don't listen to a whole lot of rap, to be honest. But bands that I saw that are going to fall into this genre are going to be Joyner Lucas, Limp Bizkit, 303. Hey, give it up for 303. They're a Denver band. Love supporting bands out of Washington and Colorado. Of course, I love to support all bands in general, but bands that from my hometown just have that little bit of extra love for me, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, Cypress Hill and Ice Cube, one of the original founders of NWA. Oh, man. Now, as far as these bands go, really quick, Joyner Lucas, don't know anything about him, never heard his music, didn't even know who he was until about a month before we bought his tickets. My sister and brother-in-law, her fiance, asked me and Jess to go to this show with them for his birthday. And though, I don't know much, I didn't know any of his music or much into rap for that matter. Of course, we took that opportunity to spend that time with our family at a show. And that was a really good show. My dad went with us. We all had a really good time, but definitely not going to be my top pick. 303, as amazing as they are, coming from Colorado, I mean, they have that love, but yeah, they're not going to take that top pick either. Here's something interesting. Actually got a chance to see 303 twice this year. Both times at festivals. We saw them at the So What Texas and the When We Were Young festival. Both sets, amazing. A lot of energy, a lot of hype. Definitely a good band, but not taking that number one spot. There was Cypress Hill, who played with Slipknot. That was an interesting combo. Hey, Cypress Hill being 420 friendly, absolutely put on an amazing show. Absolutely gets a little extra love as well. But for me, they're not taking that number one spot, which now leaves it down to two bands, right? Or an artist and a band. That artist being Ice Cube and the band being Limp Bizkit. Boy, that's a tough one because I tell you what, I listened to NWA growing up. When that album Straight Outta Compton came out, I listened to it over and over growing up in high school. It was my favorite. It was the only rap album I had ever listened to up to that point in my life. And they made such an impact on me again, as far as the music, you know, just how I look at music, how much I enjoy music, different styles, different types of music. And though I don't listen to a lot of rap music, seeing Ice Cube was as close as I will ever get to seeing NWA. I got to see him play at Blue Ridge, and I tell you what, he played a lot of his own stuff, which I don't know a lot of it, but when he played a couple of the NWA songs off of Straight Outta Compton, me and that entire place went crazy. You could just feel the energy that he was giving out and that the crowd was giving back to him. Oh my God. Again, that is the closest I will ever get to seeing NWA. Absolutely amazing. Although, I'm going to say he's not going to take that number one spot, which then leaves Limp Bizkit, right? And I'm going to tell you something about Limp Bizkit before I go any further. But let me get this thing going. Hold on. Couple of things about Limp Bizkit. First of all, I've been listening to them since, the 90s when they came out. Absolutely love their stuff. Never had an opportunity to see them. And I think it was in 2019. 2022, as things were starting to come back after the pandemic. Limp Bizkit was supposed to play the Blue Ridge Rock Festival. And when Jess and I were looking at different festivals that we wanted to attend, we decided we were going to do that Blue Ridge Festival solely based on Limp Bizkit being there. It was a band neither of us had saw. It's kind of a little bit of a bucket list band for us. And of course, when we got a little closer to the actual festival, Limp Bizkit ended up pulling out because of COVID. They canceled that show as well as the rest of their tour dates they had in 2020. So we were pretty disappointed that we didn't get to see them, even though we had bought tickets already for that festival. That's not the first time either that I've gone to a festival specifically for a band, and that band didn't play, and I didn't get to see them. It happened, I think, in 2019 when I went to the Epicenter Festival. I went there to go see Tool. I picked that festival specifically to see Tool. And the night they were headlining, there was some crazy weather that came in. I heard there were some tornadoes that touched down near us. I don't know if that's true or not. I never really confirmed that, but the band, lots of bands actually canceled. I think it was mid-afternoon when that storm rolled in and they canceled the entire rest of the day. Never got to see Tool. I was so disappointed. Tool being my number 2 of all-time favorite bands. Of course, I've got my Tool tattoo right there. But anyway, we're not talking about Tool. We're talking about Limp Bizkit not making the Blue Ridge Festival. So when they announced that they were coming this year to Denver, things got a little bit tricky and a little bit dicey because I don't remember specifically the date. It was, I believe, in May, though, that they were coming here to Denver. The very next day, we were supposed to be in Texas for the So What Festival. We were going 2 of the 3 days. We originally planned to drive down there. We were going to go a day before the festival, hang out with my family. I got aunt, uncle, and some cousins down there. So we were going to go down a day early, hang out with them, get to, just catch up with them, and then go to the So What Festival on Thursday and Friday. Well, when Limp Bizkit made that announcement that they were going to be in town Thursday, the night before we were leaving, we thought, well, there's no way we are going to be able to go to that Limp Bizkit show, drive for 11, 12 hours to Texas and then be ready to go first thing in the morning for a festival. I mean, it was near impossible. So some decisions had to be made. And that decision was that we decided we were not going to drive. We were going to buy those tickets to see Limp Bizkit here in Denver. We were going to catch an early morning flight, almost a red eye, Friday morning, and get there early enough to run our errands, do what we needed to do, and then make it to that festival. And that's what we did. And I tell you what, I'm not disappointed that we did that. It was pretty rough that Friday morning getting into Texas. We were both tired. We had gotten maybe an hour, 2 hours sleep the night before. We had drinking at Limp Bizkit. We got pretty good buzz going on at that show. So a little bit hungover as well. I tell you what, yeah, that start of the day in Texas was a rough one. But I'm getting ahead of myself talking about that festival. We're talking about Limp Bizkit. And they delivered. Here in Loveland, Colorado, that's where they played. Oh, they put on an amazing show. I'm so glad I got the opportunity to see them because it was shortly after that, after they played here in Denver, that they were just going to do a tour in the UK or somewhere cross seas. And Fred got sick. They didn't say, or they might have now said what it was that he was, what was ailing him, what his problems were. But anyway, he ended up canceling that entire tour. And whether or not Limp Bizkit will be back is yet to be seen. So that might have been mine and Jess's only opportunity to see them. So though it was rough pulling it off, it was absolutely worth it. So there is my top pick for the rap/rap rock category, which leaves us with two left. We're getting to that all other rock category. But before that, I mentioned earlier pop, right? Who was going to see me at a pop show? Well, I tell you what, this wasn't my first pop concert. I had kids, obviously, and when they were younger, they didn't listen to the same music that I listened to back then. They had their own taste in music. Of course, now they've come around and like more of the rock music, metal music. But back then, of course, they had their own taste, their own thoughts on music, which some of those were pop bands. And of course, my parents taking me to concerts at an early age, I wanted to expose my kids to that. So I've been to a few pop shows. I know I saw Britney Spears. She's the only one that really comes to mind, but I know there are a few other ones. But we're not talking about in the past. We're talking about 2022. Which band was it? Well, those of you who follow me regularly already know which band I'm talking about. Before I say it, let me get my joint going here again. Sorry, this thing keeps going out on me. Starting to feel a little bit stoned though. Not feeling super baked, obviously, because I'm doing more talking than smoking here. But hopefully all of you out there that are watching are able to indulge a little bit and you are feeling nice and comfortable, feeling a nice little high, nice little buzz, or whatever it is that you want to feel. Hopefully you're in that zone right now. Hey, hopefully you're still with me. We're 30 minutes into this video. I knew this was going to run long. I wasn't really sure how long, and we're not even done yet. So anyway, those of you who are still sticking around, who are still watching my video, thank you. I really appreciate that. As always, that means a lot to me. Let me get a quick sip here. Had a little tickle in the back of my throat from all this talking. All right, anyway, as I was saying, a couple things. One, I hope you're all out there having an awesome day, an awesome time watching my videos again. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with me today. It really means a lot to me, even if it's just a handful of you. It means a lot that you are watching not only this video, but, I know who some of you are and you watch my videos on a regular basis. Thank you all so much for that love and support. Let's get back to these reviews, and we were talking about the pop category. Now, there's only one band that I saw this year that fits in that genre, and that was the Backstreet Boys. Now, I didn't pick this show. This was a show that Jess wanted to go to, and don't get me wrong, I'm not sad or disappointed that I went because I had an awesome time, and it was really cool to go with Jess, who knew literally every song that they played, and she had such a good time. So to take her and let her experience that, for me, that was fun. I got a lot out of that. And honestly, I maybe only knew one song that they played, but like I said, I had a really, really good time. Now, they played a really long set, too. I think they played 20-some songs, so love it when bands come out and play that many songs, even if they're not bands that I want to see. Hey, they're really delivering for the fans, and I really appreciate it when they play those extra long sets. I know some bands go out there and play for maybe an hour and 40 minutes and call it a night. Some of these other bands are playing for 2+ hours. Thank you from all of your fans, whether I'm a fan or not. I appreciated that they did that. And like I said, Jess, she knew every song. We had a really good time. Being that that's the only band I saw in this genre, of course, it's going to get my #1 pick, right? It's a no-brainer. All right.